A friend of mine owns a bar. He has 4 CCTV cameras. Only one of those cameras points to the bartending area where he can see the actions of his employees. I'm there having a drink. It's early, 5 p.m., and I'm the only one. When I see the employee go into the back room and then come out, something seems off. The guy is a bit strange. He asks me, "So you know Dean, the bar owner, pretty good?" I go, "Yeah. I just helped Dean install a brand new CCTV system in the bar. I know this, a lie, because Dean and I installed those cameras together." "Yeah, that's cool. How many cameras? 4? "Yeah, and all of them are HD. This was a bit strange to me. I mean, why are we even talking about this? Then I noticed him slipping money from the register into his pocket, so I call him out on this. He says, "Dude, Dean makes plenty of cash. How about this? I'll give you $20 and we call it cool." I fire back, "Give me $40. "All right." I then say, "Hey, man, let me buy you a drink," so we have a drink, and I congratulate him on his little scheme. I then say, "Gotta go out for a smoke." It's around 6 p.m. by then, and I call Dean up and say, "Dean, your bartender is stealing cash from you. Your 5th CCTV camera caught him. I'm also pretty sure he turned off the other camera." Dean thanks me, then tells me to keep him busy until he gets there. So I go back in and we start talking about random stuff. Dean then walks in with 2 lovely police officers, and Dean immediately says, "Get out from behind the bar. The cops are here to arrest you for theft." The bartender fired back, "Dude, I didn't steal. And you don't have any proof," to which Dean responded, "You turned off the 4 CCTV cameras, but you don't know about my hidden one." The guy is told to sit put by one officer as another officer goes back and reviews the footage. It's clear as day this guy is stealing. The bartender then gets arrested and taken to the police car. Dean refused to take the $40 back from me, and I got my tab for free that night. This happened some years ago to my father. He is the owner of a prestigious law firm in my country, and he did a job for a very well-known company in my country, and he was owed about $2 million USD. Seems like much, but it was worth it as he defended the company many times. They would have gone bankrupt if it wasn't for him. After he finishes his work, the company doesn't want to pay him at the moment, but politely tells him to wait. A year passes by, and none of his calls gets a response, but him being a smart man and a lawyer sees what he can do. The setup. My father sends one of his associates undercover to befriend the company's owner. Important later. Then he calculates how much will they owe him with interests and all, and then he just waits a few years to make interest grow. The associate he sent befriended the owner and told him that he is a lawyer and has friends in the government. He told him that he should deposit money into the company's bank account as he knew there was going to be an investigation for tax evasion. He had worked in that county that had his personal account in the tax collecting branch some years back, and they were already investigating him. And he actually deposited all, and I mean all of his personal accounts into the company's account like the fool that he is. The revenge. Dad's undercover associate informs him where the money is, and then my dad tries to contact them one last time, but they still don't respond. In my country, if someone doesn't get paid after some time, they can do an embargo, which is basically taking whatever money he is owed either in assets, furniture, money in the bank, etc. And so with the interest, my dad is able to embargo the majority of company stores, and as the embargo is happening, he can't use his bank account as it is frozen, so basically no lawyer because the bad word spread about him not paying. And so, with the majority of their stores now in my dad's name, their stock prices fell dramatically, and with the money my father got from the owner's bank account, it basically bought the rest of the company about 70% off. The aftermath. The owner. Now, the owner couldn't take his money from the company, as that would be embezzlement, and if he told anyone that this was his money, he would get arrested for tax fraud. And part of it was used to try to keep the company afloat while they weren't getting any sales, so he basically became homeless. My dad, he now owned a famous brand and got it working normally after a few years, and his associate who helped him was now the CEO of the brand. So remember, kids always pay your lawyers because they know better. I have a cousin. He is one of the most terrible people I have ever known. Selfish, dishonest, bad temper, you name it. Some years ago, my cousin was manipulating my aging grandmother and mooching off of her. He had her convinced that he was her son and his kids were her grandkids. My grandmother was starting to suffer from dementia at the time, but was still able to take care of herself. My mother figured out what he was doing and was having none of it. My mother attempted to confront him about it one day at my grandmother's house when he was dropping off his 3 kids for free childcare so he could go do whatever he wanted. He started shouting at my mother and threatening her in the driveway. My mom's dog didn't like this and started barking at him. He started screaming at my mom to get her viciousest dog away from his children, that if her dog bit them, he'd sue her, etc. My mom turned to grab her dog's collar and put the dog back in the truck, but while my mom, who is disabled and in her late 50s at the time, had her back turned and he sucker punched her as hard as he could, knocking her down and breaking her collarbone. Mom knew she was hurt, came up off the ground and told him she'd call the cops and press charges on him. My grandmother, who you must remember was not exactly in her right mind anymore but hadn't been diagnosed yet, then screamed at my mother not to cause drama and if she pressed charges on my cousin that my grandmother would disown her. My mom went to the doctor, confirmed the broken collarbone. The doctor was smart, told her that if a person had done this to her, she could press abuse or assault charges. My mom didn't want to make a fuss. That's when I took over. Fine. If he was going to play dirty, I'd play dirty too. I knew that my cousin had been completely wrecking the house he was living in. He was often late with rent and the place was falling apart. He had 3 kids full-time and a kid from his first marriage who was there on weekends. I knew that the smaller kids often went to school dirty and in ripped clothes and were constantly sick. The sick children often got my grandmother sick too. With this knowledge in mind, I called CPS. I'm pretty good at imitating different accents. I knew the call would be recorded, so I disguised my voice and reported that I was scared for those poor children, that I'd seen how dirty they were, how his house was overrun with pets, and I had heard him screaming at the children and was worried that he was being abusive to them. Turns out, I was more right than I knew. Also, apparently, his actual neighbors had been calling CPS about him too. My call tipped the scales. The next day, CPS agents rolled up early in the morning for a surprise inspection. The younger kids were in dirty beds with no proper blankets. There were holes in the floor, bare electrical outlets, cats and cat feces everywhere. Trash and debris everywhere. Apparently, it was so disgusting there that CPS took the kids out to their van and gave him 30 minutes to contact a relative who could safely house them. My aunt came and took the kids to her house. My cousin was given an order, 30 days to get the house in proper shape, clean and safe for children. Their needs must be visibly met, etc., or his children would be taken away and placed in foster care. He was furious. His wife was furious. They barely managed to get the place fixed in time. I heard about him complaining about some out-of-state nosy jerk called Child Services on me if I ever find out who that jerk was. Blah, blah. I just sat back and laughed. That's what you get for messing with my mom, boy. His name was red flagged for the next several years, and the slightest complaint was investigated immediately. His wife, mother of the 3 who were nearly taken, started hounding him constantly about keeping the house clean because she was the one working to support them. His temper just got worse, and at one point he assaulted his eldest child. His ex-wife pressed charges of child abuse, and he got put in jail for a few days. My dementia-ridden grandmother bailed him out. This got him red-flagged even more, and the police made him surrender all his hunting rifles and handguns. Any time after that, when my grandmother would get sick from some nastiness his kids gave her, I had fun picking up the phone. Because of the red flags, prior arrest for assault and etc., Child Services stayed on him on a monthly basis. His wife eventually got so tired of CPS constantly coming around trying to take her kids away that she left him and took the kids with her to a different town. When my grandmother passed away, cousin started some nasty drama with my mom again. He threatened her, locked her out of my grandmother's house, which she had inherited in the will, so he could hold it over her head and try to get her to give him more money. Turns out his temper had gotten him in trouble, and he'd had his right to bear arms taken away. He inherited some guns from my grandparents in the wills. Oops! Guess how the cops found out he had guns in his possession? Yep, that was me, again. I've also gotten him kicked out of Facebook trading groups, signed him up for newsletters, and generally any other petty thing I could think of. My mom now has a restraining order against him, and we haven't seen him in over a year. Last I heard, though, his middle child had run away from home, his second ex-wife has moved with the two youngest back to her home state, and he's got nothing since he blew through his inheritance money in less than a year. Just writing this makes me smile all over again. Semi-necessary background. In my senior year of high school, I went on foreign exchange to Brazil. I chose Brazil because it's a beautiful tropical country, and I'm a cocky idiot who thinks just because I'm super smart with math science that a whole language, Portuguese, would come easily to me. It didn't. I struggled with the language and found myself in an awkward situation. I'm a clever bloke and am used to being able to express that. I'm that guy who likes to know why everything works the way it does, and I'm used to launching into explanations about how things work at the drop of a hat, but here I sat, unable to express myself as eloquently as I wanted to. So I turned from a talkative, mildly obnoxious know-it-all into a quiet kid. Necessary background. While I was in Brazil on exchange, I was placed into public school. Now, for my American friends, Brazilian high school is a little different from American high school. Instead of students going from class to class, the teachers would switch classrooms between each subject. The teacher, who is the subject of this story, was the English teacher, a man who looked almost identical to Weird Al Yankovic. He began his classes by walking into the room, handing out some English assignments, throwing an English music video on the TV with Portuguese subtitles, and then he'd read the newspaper or a book for the rest of the class. During his first class, while reading his newspaper, he loudly explained that group work was allowed on all assignments and tests, at which point everyone in the class looked at me. Clearly, he was not aware that he had an American exchange student in his class. Subsequently, every one of his classes for the rest of the term, all the students would form a long conga line around my desk, and he wouldn't notice. Of course, the assignments were trivial for me, the equivalent of middle school English, so I'd knock them out instantly, then provide explanations in broken Portuguese along with the answers. The smarter kids in the class would check their answers against mine and give better explanations. By the end of the year, everyone in his class had a perfect grade. Our teacher was ecstatic. Clearly, his teaching style of playing music videos and ignoring students was a success. He threw a small party for us with food and drinks. At the end of this party, as we were all leaving, I stopped to talk to him in English for the first time since being in his class. "Hey, Professor T, I just wanted to thank you for a fun class." "Of course. Wait, you are American?" "Yes. You didn't know?" I left him there, slack-jawed and with a class of students speaking very passable English.